He's actively losing Biden stalwarts on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, every minute that has gone by is basically losing him
Distinguished guests,
a huge amount of
the
support.
President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Here we go.
Hey, buddy. Thank you. Please be seated. Well, good evening. We just concluded this year's NATO summit, and the consensus among the members was it was a great success. It was especially momentous because it represented the 75th year of the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in history. The idea was to create an alliance of free and democratic nations that would commit themselves to a compact of collective defense. Standing together, they knew we'd all be safer. An attack on one would be treated as an attack on all. And it's worked because a would-be aggressor knows if they attack one of us, they'll be attacked by all of us. Sending that message is the best way to deter aggression and prevent wars in the first place. For those who thought NATO's time had passed, they got a rude awakening when Putin invaded Ukraine. Some of the oldest and deepest fears in Europe roared back to life because once again, a murderous madman was on the march. But this time, no one cowered in appeasement, especially the United States. We collected intelligence that Russia was planning to invade Ukraine months before the invasion. I directed the intelligence community to be a significant amount of intelligence be declassified so I could start building an international coalition to oppose the invasion. Then in February, some of you remember, I warned the world that the invasion was imminent. I rallied a coalition of 50 nations from Europe to Asia to help Ukraine defend itself. Many foreign policy experts thought as Putin amassed Russian forces just 100 miles north of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, but Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia. The capital would fall in less than a week. But the Ukrainian people, backed by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger than it has ever been. During the week of this summit, several heads of states made it a point in their statements to thank the United States and to thank me personally for all that NATO has achieved. NATO is not only stronger, NATO is bigger because we led the charge to bring in Finland and Sweden into the alliance, and it makes a gigantic difference. Excuse me. Meanwhile, my predecessor has made it clear he has no commitment to NATO. He's made it clear that he would feel no obligation to honor Article 5. He's already told Putin, and I quote,
this is supposed to be
do
a
whatever
press
the hell you
conference.
want. In fact, the day after Putin invaded Ukraine, here's what he said. It was genius. It was wonderful. Some of you forgot that, but that's exactly what he said. But I made it clear, a strong NATO is essential to American security. And I believe the obligation of Article 5 is sacred. And I would remind all Americans, Article 5 is invoked only once in NATO's long history, and that was to defend America after 9/11. I made it clear that I will not bow down to Putin. I will not walk away from Ukraine. I will keep NATO strong. That's exactly what we did, and exactly what we'll continue to do. Now, the future of American policy is up to the American people. This is much more than a political question. It's more than that. It's a national security issue. Don't reduce this to the usual testament that people talk about, issues of being a political campaign. It's far too important. It's about the world we live in for decades to come. Every American must ask herself or himself,
What are you waffling about?
is the world safer with NATO? Are you safer? Is your family safer? I believe the American people know. The answer to all those questions is yes. And I believe the American people understand that America is stronger because of our alliances. I believe the American consensus from Truman to Reagan to me still holds today. America cannot retreat from the world. We must lead the world. We're an indispensable nation, as Madeleine Albright wrote. Now let me turn to 3 other key issues. Just this morning, we had a great economic report showing inflation is down. Overall prices fell last month. Core inflation is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Prices are falling for cars, appliances, and airfares. Grocery prices have fallen since the start of the year. We're going to keep working to take down corporate greed to bring those prices down further. Meanwhile, Trump's calling for a 10% tariff on everything Americans buy, including food from overseas, vegetables, and other necessities.
Yeah, President
And economists tell us that that would cost the average American working family another $2,500 a year. It's a tax of $2,500 a year. Second, our efforts to secure the border, southern border, is working.
Who thought this was a good idea
After Trump
for a
killed
speech?
the bipartisan effort to secure the border, Republicans and Democrats had worked on,
Dude.
because he thought it would benefit me and make him a loser, Republicans walked away. So I took executive action last month. As a consequence, working with Mexico, border encounters have gone down over 50%. The current level is lower today than when Trump left office.
How the hell is he
Third,
going to be able to answer
for
reporter
months,
questions?
The United States has been working to secure a ceasefire in Gaza.
The issue is
to
that
bring
it's
the
not supposed to be a
hostages
speech, Alan
create a
Smith. It's supposed to be a
path
press conference
peace
for
and
people to ask
stability in the
him
Middle
questions.
East.
It'd be unscripted.
6 weeks ago, I laid out a detailed plan in writing. It was endorsed by the UN Security Council.
If he leaves
the
without taking
G7.
questions, I'm going
That
I'm going
framework
to
is now
riot.
agreed on by both Israel and Hamas. So I sent my team to the region to hammer out the details. These are difficult, complex issues. There's still gaps to close, but we're making progress. The trend is positive.
Yeah, this
And
is
I'm
all
determined to
scripted.
get
He's
this
reading a
deal done and
teleprompter.
bring an end to this war, which should end now. Let me conclude where I began. We're the United States of America. We are the indispensable nation. Our leadership matters. Our partnerships matter. This moment matters. We must rise to meet it. With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here.
What?
Reuters, Jeff Mason.
He was given a list? Did they vet the journalists?
Mr. President, your political future has hung over the NATO summit a little bit this week. Speaker Pelosi made a point of suggesting that your decision on whether to stay in the race was still open. George Clooney and a handful of lawmakers have called on you to step aside. Reuters is reporting tonight that UAW leadership is concerned about your ability to win.
UAW just endorsed me, but go ahead.
Thank you. My question for you is, how are you incorporating these developments into your decision to stay? And separately, what concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
This is bizarre, by the way.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly, the idea, I served in the Senate a long time. The idea that
Wait, did I just miss a
senators
fucking gaffe?
and congressmen
God,
running for office
no.
worry about the
Vice
ticket
President
is not
Trump?
unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the
Oh,
campaign.
God.
So there's a long way to go
He's
in
done.
this campaign. And so
Step down,
I'm just
old
going to
man.
keep moving. Keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We got more work to finish.
Guys-
There's so much. We made so much progress.
Every Democratic
Think about it.
strategist on his team
Think
right
about
now
where
is
we are
considering
economically
seppuku,
relative to
okay?
the rest of the world.
Every single one.
Name me a world leader who wouldn't want to trade places with our economy. We've created over 800,000 manufacturing jobs.
She's not
1.5 million
qualified to be
I mean,
president.
So things are moving.
What the
We
hell?
got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large.
Oh my
Their
god,
prices,
dude.
corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down, and so I'm optimistic about where things are going. Danny Kemp, AFP.
Oh god.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, and the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. And officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, here, I mean,
No,
Putin, I
guys-
said, no, I'm sorry.
Guys, this is
Zelensky.
the intervention. This is the grandpa
And then
intervention.
I had 5 other names. Look, guys,
Grandpa, you can't drive
the
anymore.
idea anybody suggests that
We need your keys.
we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is, well, anyway, I thought it was the most successful conference I've attended in a long time, and find me a world leader who didn't think it was. Next one, Nancy Cordes, CBS.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned other instances in history where presidents have faced a challenge, but what makes this moment in history so unique is that it is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends, supporters, people who think you've done a great job over the past 4 years. Have you spent time thinking about what it would mean for your legacy, which you've worked decades to build, if you
So
stay in the
Jover.
race, despite the concerns that voters say they have?
No, every
And
question-
you lose to someone who you yourself
Every
have
question is
argued
gonna be this.
unfit to return to the Oval Office.
Well, look, I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started. As
Yeah,
you
sure.
recall, understandably, many of you and many economists thought
It's just
my initial
painful, Ms. Milena.
initiatives that I put forward, can't do that, it's going to cause inflation, things are going to skyrocket, the debt's going to go up. What are you hearing now from mainstream economists? 16 economic Nobel laureates said I've done a hell of a job. That under my plans so far and what's going to happen in the future if I'm reelected, that things are going to get much better. Our economy is growing. I was determined when I got elected to stop the trickle-down economic theory. That if the wealthy did very well, everybody else would do well.
Well, you didn't do that.
My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people and working-class people need help. And so what happened is I decided to was able to implement as president what I believed when I was a senator.
He's dying out
And
there.
that is that the way to build this economy is from the middle out and the bottom up. That way we grow the economy. And the wealthy still do very well. They do fine. And guess what? Find me an economist, a mainstream economist who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now? And so we got more to do,
That's
though. We got to
not
finish
the
the job.
issue. That's not what anyone is
And by the
asking
way,
you
I come
about.
from the corporate state of the world. Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined. I'm not anti-corporate, but corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. Doubled. It's time things get back in order a little bit. It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase of corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. We're going to make a lot of changes that I've been talking about because we're going to continue to grow this economy. And by the way, I know, remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union.
No, this isn't better than the
Well,
debate.
guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history. Not a joke. And guess what? We had the Treasury Department do a study. When unions do better, everybody does better.
No,
Everybody
this
does
is
better.
so much worse
And we
than the
talk
debate,
about
guys.
How, for example, when I
This
went,
is so much
remember
worse
when
than the
we
debate.
talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States? Used to be 40% of the industry. We invented the chip. 40% of the industry was in the United States. And
Why are
former
you
presidents
talking about
decided that the
computer
best way to do it is
chips?
find the cheapest labor in the world.
Your
Send the
campaign is
product over there and
dying. Why are you
import
talking
what the
about
product
computer
was.
chips?
And so what did I do? I was told not to go over to Europe, to Asia, including Europe, but Asia. And I remember going to South Korea, convincing them to invest $20 billion in the United States to build computer chip factories. And I asked why when they finally decided to do it. And the answer was because you have the safest economy in the world and you have the best workers in the world. So the whole idea here is we've invested, there's over $50 billion in investment.
The question was about his suitability to be president.
None of you thought that would happen. None of you thought that would happen. But it's happening. It's happening. And it's going to grow economies. All through, and by the way, red states and blue states. Matter of fact, there's as much in red states as blue states. I've made no distinction. So my generic point is that the idea that we can't continue to build and grow the economy, make it fairer.
Are you?
Like I said, from my standpoint, when the middle class does well,
He's forgotten what
that's
the
when
question
the whole
was.
economy grows. The poor have a shot, the wealthy do well.
He
The wealthy
doesn't
gotta
know what
start
he's
paying their
talking about,
taxes.
man.
As a follow-up, sir, you mentioned that your Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes and her accomplishments over the last 4 years that make her ready to serve on day one if necessary?
First of all, the way she's handled the issue of freedom of women's bodies to have control over their bodies. Secondly, her ability to handle almost any issue on the board. This was a hell of a prosecutor. She was a first-rate person, and in the Senate, she was really good. I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that. She is qualified to be president. That's why I picked her.
That was the one
Felicia
good answer
Schwartz,
so far.
Financial Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
Oh God, dude.
The limits I've acknowledged I have.
There's been
Oh,
reporting
God.
that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was,
Oh God.
instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting the fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, and if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean,
Nah, he's done,
my
guys.
schedule has been full bore. I've done, where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball? I mean, look, he's done virtually nothing.
He called
And
his
I
own
have-
Vice
I don't know how
President
many.
Trump,
Don't
man.
hold me to it. Roughly 20 major events. Some with thousands of people showing up. And so I just think it's better. I always have an inclination, whether I was playing sports or doing politics, just to keep going, not stop. I just got to just pace
I don't
myself
think
a
he's
little more.
sunk Kamala.
Pace myself. And the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, That's what it was about. That's what it was about. And by the way, even with that, I love my staff, but they add things all the time. At the very end. I'm catching hell from my wife.
Thank you for the 10 gifted
Anyway.
tier 1 subs. This
I'm
hurts.
sorry, Zeke Miller, Associated Press.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two questions for you. First,
Tomorrow, there are gonna
on
be
the
so
NATO
many
summit,
more people
President
calling for him
Zelensky,
to
in your
step
meeting
down.
with him, he pressed you to lift your limitations on the Ukrainian use of American weapons, saying that, in his public remarks afterwards, saying that Ukraine cannot win the war unless those limitations are lifted. Are you reconsidering your position on that? And
Yeah,
then
this is a
secondly,
lot
following up on
worse than
Felicia's
the
question
debate.
there, leaders of your own party have said that they're not worried about that debate. They're worried about the next bad night and the bad night after that.
Yeah, he just
How
threw
can you reassure
everyone
the
under the
American
bus.
people that you are up to the task and that there won't be more bad nights at a debate stage or somewhere else?
First thing about Zelensky asking for the ability to strike deep into Russia. We've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term and the near or abroad into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not. But if he had the capacity to strike Moscow, strike the Kremlin, would that make sense? It wouldn't. The
No,
question
dog.
is, what's the best use of the weaponry he has?
Dog.
The weaponry we're getting to him. I've gotten a more long-range capacity, as well as defensive capacity. And so our military is where I'm following the advice of my
We're in the worst timeline,
commander-in-chief,
guys.
the
He's
chief
not
of staff
using
of the
this to
military,
step down.
as well as the Secretary of Defense and,
And
our
he's
intelligence people.
beefing it.
And we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to
Bad nights, sir. How can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or it's a matter of foreign policy?
Well, I tell you what, the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself. And that is, am I getting the job done? Am I getting the job done? Can you name me somebody who's gotten more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years? I created 2,000 jobs just last week. So if I slow down, I can't get the job done. That's a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. But there's no indication of that yet. None. What do we got here? Merrick, Pulaski Radio.
Oh, he's
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you?
fading.
I'm well.
The elections in the US have consequences around the world. You have pretty high standing in Europe. I just asked President Macron about you, and he said we are happy to have him as the President of the United States. But there is a concern. Many people in Poland and across Europe are worried that the former president may win the election. And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine, or push Ukraine to give up territories to Russia.
They're correct.
And yourself was warning just 2 minutes ago about it. So my question is, do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
Well, look, I think, how can I say this without sounding too self-serving? I'm not having any of my European allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. He'd be a disaster. It'd be a disaster.
You know they can't tell you
mean-
not to run.
I think he said in one of his rallies, don't hold me to this, recently.
You're the
where
current
NATO,
president.
I just learned about NATO or something to that effect. Foreign policy has never been his strong point.
None of these other
And
world leaders are
he
shooting
seems to have an
themselves in the
affinity
foot
to people who
diplomatically.
are
So
authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe. That worries Poland. And nobody, including the people of Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine, that that's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong. You may recall, no one was talking about Finland joining NATO. I remember talking to Putin right after we got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, et cetera. And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine.
keep
You're
in
going to
mind,
get the NATOization of Finland.
keep in mind, they
And
screened
about
all
4
of
weeks
these
later, I got a
reporters
call.
first.
No, that's not true. Probably 5 months later, from the president of Finland, could he come and see me? Because in my office, I invited him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes.
Yeah, these are the pre-screened softball questions.
I beg your pardon? And so Finland joined NATO, 800-mile border, it's a significant, and they were already allies, but they weren't part of NATO.
I didn't pick up what happened
And
in
you
that
heard-
interaction.
I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall whether he said it public or in our closed meeting, but he wouldn't mind it being repeated. He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our
Did they
interest
kill that guy?
because of
I
the
don't think
joint
so, no.
ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly
Malachi, it's going very poorly.
in Turkey and other places, to agree to the expansion.
Oh, he was reminding
Well,
him
they
that he wasn't
expanded.
answering the question? Yeah.
And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations, 50, to support Ukraine. 50. And we were able to bring about a coalition of Europe and Asia, Japan and South Korea. I just we talked about AUKUS, and we talked about the relationship between Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea, the United States. We're making the world safer and stronger because we have to deal with the new arrangement that exists in the world. The Cold War is over. The post-war era is over. What is going to replace it? And I respectfully suggest I have a pretty good idea what that should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it, and we're just going to get stronger. David Sanger. Where's it?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Be nice, David.
Mr. President, the NATO declaration that was issued yesterday was very notable because it described China as a decisive enabler of the war in Ukraine for its provision of critical goods to the Russians. That's part of a broader partnership that seems to have cemented in place in the past 2 or 3 years. I think one that you were a little bit doubtful of when we asked you about it some time ago. So I'd be interested to know whether you have a strategy now of trying to interrupt the partnership between China and Russia, and whether or not in a second term you would pursue that, if you could describe that strategy to us. And along the way, could you also tell us whether you think, just to follow up on Felicia's question, that if you were in a room with Vladimir Putin again, the way you were 3 years ago, or with President Xi, that a few years from now you will be able to go negotiate with them, handle them one-on-one?
Well, the first part of the question is, we discussed and I raised in the NATO summit, and others raised, the future of China's involvement, what they're going to do, what they're doing with Russia in terms of accommodating, facilitating them. They're getting access to additional. They're not supplying weapons themselves. They're supplying mechanisms for them to be able to get weapons.
Guys,
and China's
did he just burp
position
into the
is
mic?
basically, and I've spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has. Over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through.
Did
for
he
real.
just burp into the mic?
And by the way, I handed all my notes. But my point is that
Cool.
she believes
This is a PR
that
nightmare.
China is a large enough market that they can entice any country, including European countries, to invest there in return for commitments from
he did.
Europe
Cool.
to do A, B, C, or D, or not to do certain things. What's happened is we had a long discussion about what we cannot, we have to make clear China has to understand that if they are supplying Russia with information and capacity, along with working with North Korea and others to help Russia in armament, that they're not going to benefit economically as a consequence of that by getting the kind of investment they're looking for. And so, for example, we're in a situation where, and we've reestablished direct contact with China after that, remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end? Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me, and our military has direct access to one another, and they contact one another when we have problems. The issue is that we have to make sure that Xi understands there's a price to pay for undercutting both the Pacific Basin as well as Europe, and as it relates to Russia and dealing with Ukraine. And so we, for example, if you want to invest in China, as you know this area really well. If you want to invest in China, you have to have a 51% Chinese owner. You have to make sure that you do by their rules, and you don't have the authority, and that you have to provide all access to all the data and information you have. There was a while there, as you recall, the last administration and other administrations, where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in because they had access to
That's
over a
what
billion
she said.
people in the market.
John Bainbridge.
A market, not a billion, but a lot of people in the market. And so they were doing it. But that got
He's doing a bit
curtailed
better now.
when we started saying we're going to play by the same rules. For example, the idea they don't abide by the international rules related to subsidizing products by the government funding. So guess what? They're not going to be able to export their electric vehicles to the United States without a significant tariff. Others are doing the same thing around the world. But it is a concern. It is a concern that you have both China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, countries that are not necessarily coordinated in the past, looking to figure out how they can have impact.
Do you have a strategy to interrupt that impact?
Yes, I do, but I'm not prepared to talk about the detail of it in public.
Oh yeah, doing well is very relative right now.
And I think you'll see that some of our European friends are going to be curtailing their investment in Russia. In China. As long as China continues to have this indirect help to Russia in terms of being able to help their economy as well as help them in, as a consequence of that, their ability to fight in Ukraine. The other thing that we talked a lot about is that,
Yeah, he
and
called
I raised
Kamala
it,
Harris
and
Trump.
I didn't hear any, I can't swear that everyone agreed because not everyone got to talk about it. But we need a new industrial policy in the West. For example, We talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity, has to be able to generate their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to, it came as a surprise to some of us how we had fallen behind in the West in terms of the ability to construct new material, new weaponry, new everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things that came out of this
By
was
the way, this
we're
is
going to
new
be meeting
reporting.
again with a number of my colleagues, my European colleagues, is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems. Not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same, it's what Russia's trying to figure out. That they went to China and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for to be able to, the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was a discussion as well.
You know, someone jokingly said,
You would be ready to go deal with Putin and Xi 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm ready to deal with them now and 3 years from now. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And, but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with.
guys, there's going to be like
But
20 new
I
Democratic
understand
Congress
the
people
generic
coming out
point
tomorrow.
Is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem. First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think that Russia had 17.3% of Ukraine that they've conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory. They've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage and loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military, killed or wounded. They have over 1 million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they are very good at controlling
Noriku,
and running
he's
the
avoiding the
public outcry
questions.
that relates to how they use mechanisms to communicate with people. They lie like hell through the constituencies. They lie like hell about what's going on. And so the idea that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia in the near term is not likely. But one thing for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it, read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv.
Dozens of Democratic
just,
lawmakers over the
anyway,
next 48 hours,
read what his objective is.
according to
And
insiders.
Anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space. That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me because they're not sure where this all goes.
Guys, he's
And
done.
look what's happened in Asia.
He's done.
We have strengthened the Asian Pacific area more than anyone else has. We just put together with, today I brought on, I asked our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia. And I met twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down China's reach. But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly. Assam from NPR.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asma Khalid with NPR. I have two questions. Earlier, you spoke about the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in 2020, and there was a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders. I want to understand what changed.
Two things. Let's go back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, as you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with al-Sisi in Egypt. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with
He's going to have the worst response.
Most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard.
And you
Israel
failed.
Occasionally was less than cooperative.
The entire country
The Israeli War
the
Cabinet,
entire
I've
Gaza
been
Strip is now officially
dealing
in
with Israel
famine.
since Golda Meir.
You failed.
Some of the reporters around here cover me all the time have heard me say this. First time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk,
Why are
and
you
her
talking
assistant
about
was
Golda
Rabin
Meir?
sitting next to me.
She's
That's how far back I
irrelevant.
go. I know Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of
Yeah, then put on your
Israel.
big boy pants and
there's
deal
no
with
ultimate
it.
answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able
You
to be
sent
done
them the
in terms of the
500-pound
plan I put
bombs that
together
you were
was it would be a
blocking,
process,
like yesterday.
a two-state solution. And we
Fuck
get
you.
the Arab nations to, particularly from Egypt to all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli
Golda Meir
forces
is the
staying
former
in
prime
Gaza.
minister of
The question has
Israel.
been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be, the end of the day after has to be no occupation by Israel on the Gaza Strip, as well as the ability for
You're
us to
sending them the
access,
bombs.
get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I've put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port we attached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But that's why when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden. There's no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation
Guys.
and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got
For
bin
it to be a
Laden,
famine
we should have
every
moved
day,
on.
2 out of every
Because it was not in
10,000
no one's ever
people
going to unite
have to die.
that country.
And that
I've been
also
over every
includes
inch
4
of that, not
children
every
for every
inch,
10,000.
The entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same
Every
mistake we
day.
made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company. And all this criticism about I wouldn't provide when the weapons they needed. I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles. I was
This
able to
literally
unite
happened
the Arab
yesterday.
nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible
Fuck you.
lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war.
In an official
Doesn't mean
famine
walk away from going
situation,
after Sinwar and Hamas.
which Gaza
and
is
if you
in.
notice, you know better than most.
currently
there is a
880
growing
children die per day
dissatisfaction
from famine.
on the West Bank
Fuck this guy.
from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. And so there's a lot of moving parts.
Rafah's
I just have
also
to keep
flattened.
moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire, and get those. And by the way, look at the numbers in Israel. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
Here's an image from Rafah.
Bridge candidacy in 2020. You referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our
Yeah,
foreign policy,
I thought you
and
fixed all of
domestic
it.
division.
You've been spending the entire
And
time
I
talking
think
about how you fixed
I
it.
won't put words in anybody's mouth. Most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that.
Yeah, go
Get
retire and take
major
a
pieces
nap.
of legislation passed.
Go.
And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress, to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and
Now,
I
guys,
hadn't inherited what I did and we
Joe
just moved things along.
Biden's gone.
Anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
No, he's done.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do two more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats on the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about whether how the next week or two goes would inform your...
Am I using that way, you said?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out, for the longest time
you're not
it was,
allaying fears.
Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to,
You're
anyway.
doing terribly.
And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events, from Wisconsin to North Carolina to, anyway, to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there. And here, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters, I forget exactly how many, I want to cite a number and then find out I'm off, but we have scores of headquarters in all the toss-up states. We're organized, we're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And so, and here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. Anyway, I'm going to be going around
We need
making the
more
case
openly
of the things that I
hostile
think we have to
questions.
finish, and how we can't afford to lose what we've done or backslide on civil
Someone needs
rights,
to
civil
ask him, do
liberties,
you believe that this
women's
press
rights,
conference is
and that
helping?
little button we have. Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea we're sitting around, this is where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around, more children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promising, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything.
In Gaza, you dipshit.
I'm not going to do anything.
You're
We got a
sending
Supreme
the
Court that is
500-pound bomb.
what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still.
God.
And I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this. Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy is not an issue. Democracy is not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to
The
answer,
polling
obviously.
also shows 70%
Do you think our
want you to
democracy
step
is
down.
under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure? I mean, we've never been here before. And that's the other reason why you say hand off to another generation.
Oh my God.
I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
Oh my God.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams. And you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity, the decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot.
They're leaking like a sieve, man.
But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff and I said, I'm going to go to South Korea and we're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another.
Did he just say to
since the end
himself,
of World War
what are
II.
you doing?
I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. You know, the only thing age does is help you with it. Creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention.
Oh, God.
And so the point I'm making is,
Oh, God.
I think it's important that if the neurologist
Japan and
tells
Korea
me
back together
he
again
thinks
like
I
old
need another
besties.
exam. And by the way,
Oh, God.
I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't hidden a thing.
What?
You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem,
This
I
would be
promise
really
you.
funny
Or even
if
if they
the
don't think
fate
it's a
of
problem, they
all
think I
of
should
our
have a
lives didn't
neurological exam
depend on
again,
it.
I'll do it. But no one's suggesting that to me now.
This
And
would
I'll
be
ask you another
funny if the
question.
fate of all
No
of our
matter what I
lives didn't
did,
hang on this.
No one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times did you? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they
guys,
want, but I get overwhelming
Tomorrow, like
support.
20 people are going to come out
Overwhelming
against
support.
him. Like, it's going to be crazy.
I won. I forget how many votes I won in the primary. Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. It's not going to happen.
Oh, God, please don't whisper.
Vote for someone else?
Sure. Look. I'll end this with this.
He needs to be projecting power. Why are
I
you
served in the
whispering?
Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the topic can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least a purple, it was a red state when I started, in terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think
Their
that
self-interest is a candidate who
running
can
with
win.
Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it.
They
But
don't
so
think you
far-
can win.
Go and look at the polling data in their states.
It doesn't look good for
Look
you.
at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you're
They're
all acknowledging,
scared.
you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff. How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days?
You're the one who's been
I can give
referencing
you a
polling
series of
for
polls
you.
where you have likely voters, me versus
Oh
Trump, where
my
I win
God,
all the
dog.
time. When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes. The bottom line is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started. I mean, it hadn't started
I
in earnest
literally
yet.
have this on my soundboard.
Most of the time, it doesn't start till after September, after Labor Day. So a lot can happen. But I think I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern. And I think I'm the best qualified to win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too. But it's awful start from scratch. And, we talk about, money raised. We're not doing bad. We got about $220
We're not
million in
concerned
the
about
bank.
the money.
We're doing well. So with that, you have any want to follow up on any of that you just asked me?
Yes.
Yeah, they all
You
want to ask you
earlier
questions.
explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Mr. President,
Thank you.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody. This concludes.
respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Oh, no.
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Criticism from tonight.
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
He obviously what he's trying to say there is just listen to Donald Trump. He makes way worse gaffes all the time. But he just said listen to him. Instead, he said it because he thought he was getting a good dig at Trump, but he completely obliviously just validated Donald Trump's critique of him. He's done, man. He's done. He's cooked. It's Jover. Guys, this piece that I've been putting up on screen here, okay? This one right here. This piece ran 30 minutes before that press conference happened. This happened before the world saw what just happened in that press conference. It's going to be so much more than this. History was made today. It certainly was. How can he possibly recover? He can't. That's the thing. He can't. He cannot recover after this. We saw this earlier. These are, earlier in that speech, he mentioned, no one in my corner is saying that I can't win. That's not true. No one involved in the effort thinks he has a path. They have already concluded that he does not have a pathway to victory. And this was published at 11 a.m. this morning, updated 2:30 p.m. Like, we already went over this earlier in stream, but if you thought he had a chance of winning earlier today, I think that press conference just effectively killed his chances. I don't think there's a recovery from this, guys. I really, really don't. That was awful. Yeah, he called the vice president Trump, and totally unqualified. When do we organize against this shit show? Now. Organize a protest for wherever he's gonna be tomorrow. Like, he needs to be visually seeing people protest him. It certainly would help, I think. If he's holding, like, rallies or whatever, people need to show up and protest him. And, yeah, no. That was really bad. I was watching reporters on Twitter throughout that. They were joking about, like, pulling him off stage with, like, a stage cane. Oh my god, someone got the cabinet members on camera when he made the gaffe. Oh my god.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration
oh my god
is
they look dead. Yeah, because guys, angry and stunned, Democrats blame Biden's closest advisors for shielding him from the full extent of the president's decline. This is going to get worse. Here we go. Back in Washington, there have been clear signs throughout his term of Biden being increasingly stage managed, with lists of talking points, names of questioners, and drawings of where he should walk presented to him by aides. Ahead of closed-door cabinet meetings that Biden attends, it is customary for cabinet officials to submit questions and key talking points that they plan to present in front of Biden ahead of time to White House aides, two sources with direct knowledge told CNN. The entire display is kind of an act, one of those sources told CNN. they would come and say, hey, the president is going to call on you about 25 minutes in and ask this question. What are the bullet points you'll respond with? The second source, who echoed the same description, said when Biden attends cabinet meetings, they are not freewheeling and pretty well orchestrated. And the meetings themselves are infrequent, with one cabinet secretary telling CNN, again, this is one of the cabinet secretaries, telling CNN they are uncertain of Biden's condition because they so rarely see him. In fact, the last full cabinet meeting took place on October 2nd, 2023. There has not been a full assemblage of the president's cabinet in almost, in like 9 months? Are you kidding me? Nah, guys. They're gonna clip this to hell. Every media, conservative, mainstream, etc., are gonna clip things out of this this disastrous press conference, and yeah, it's gonna tank his career. Can I get a link to this footage?
But I think she was not qualified to be.
Absolutely. Here we go. Is invoking the 25th on the table? Honestly, before this, I would have said no. After this, with these people being like iced out and them seeing this performance, maybe the cabinet would invoke the 25th. But who's going to replace him? Kamala Harris, the vice president. It makes the most sense. I mean, honestly, here my reading of this now, like you guys heard me prior to this press conference. I said straight up, I don't think that the 25th Amendment is on the table. I said that in my conversation with Hundo. Okay? But I think it's on the table now. Because if Biden isn't willing to step down, then the cabinet might invoke the 25th Amendment in order to force him to step out. Because if the 25th Amendment is invoked, it kills his re-election campaign. He will be, in fact, forced to step down. I don't know if they have the spine to do it, but that would be like the most violent way that they could eject him. You know, politically violent, I guess. I mean, I don't like Kamala Harris. I don't like Joe Biden. He wrote the 94 crime bill. He opposed integrated busing. He's a bad guy. He's enabled genocide. Kamala Harris at least can string words together. I'm not sitting at like a Kamala Harris event worried about her ability to like say words correctly. And like the international reception of those words. Yeah, the immediate response from folks like Midas Touch are just like posting through it. Yeah, we're just posting all the Trump gaffes. Cool, glad to hear that. Absolutely, everything is fine. Exactly. Also, I don't know what the whole whispering at the microphone thing was, but it was really creepy, and I didn't like it, and I don't think anyone else liked it. Oh yeah, no, the 25th Amendment is absolutely a nuclear option, but like, that was a level of bad where I think it got put on the table. Like, granted, at like a 1% chance, but I had it at a 0% chance prior to this. Biden has always done that. It was bad. Oh, Keffels, thank you for the 10 gifted tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. God. But Biden has always done the whispering thing. It's not a power play move. It's not a good rhetorical tactic when you're trying to establish that you're a hale and healthy 81-year-old. God. The way he went from whispering to normal to yelling was triggering for me, not gonna lie. Yeah. That was embarrassing at the end? Yeah. He's always been that weird like that. Same with the gaffes. I know he's prone to gaffes, but like that was unforgivably bad, I think. I think that if his only job there was to convince people that he's fine and that his campaign is fine and that he can win, he did not accomplish those goals. He didn't even come remotely close to accomplishing those goals. Oh, Paladin, I'm pretty sure he meant it in that way too, but I don't think anyone is going to receive it that way when it gets clipped. I think it's going to get clipped to hell. I think it's going to basically be used as like a slogan for the death of his campaign. I think this was this is, if he was in a PR nightmare before, he's now like he's now in like a PR night terror. You know, he can't wake up. Nah, Mr. Malachite, people are probably sitting in shock. Frankly. Yeah, PR sleep paralysis demon has been summoned. Oh my god. According to Ryan Grimm, Biden, again, this is from Ryan Grimm, pretty reliable source. Biden to his delegates, they're free to, this is a quote, they are free to do whatever they want. Asked if that means they are free to vote for a different candidate, Biden says yes. I mean, like, that was from the presser. I know. Like, I'm sorry. So much happened during that presser. So much happened during that presser that, like, someone highlighting just a couple of the things that he said, I'm just like, I was too busy fixated on certain other things he said. I was a nominee to be a convention delegate. I had to sign a form promising to vote for Biden. Yeah, I mean, folks can break their promises, though. Happens in politics. Yeah, I agree, Ms. Milena. Hold up, recap TLDR. Basically, Biden said a ton of crazy shit in there. He was basically really belligerent at times. He asked, like, he basically said, people can vote for whoever they want. I'm the best candidate. And also, like, gaffe after gaffe. I mean, he's not going to be able to live down the Kamala Harris Trump flub. Why does the left always get the shaft? Because we're undermined by capital interest. Yeah, 12 coughs and 1 burp. True. Hey, LB. Gamer G, I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know that he can overcome where he's at right now. Kind of feel like this was an unwinnable game for a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, I agree, which is why he should have stepped down sooner. I think I need some analog horror to calm me down. Patrick Lucas, thank you for gifting a membership over on YouTube. I just I don't really have a ton of words after that debate. Not debate. It felt like a debate. I think that this absolutely solidified Democrat positions on where Biden's at. I think they're all going to dig in, and I think the statements are going to be running like water tomorrow. Would you like a palate cleanser? I genuinely don't know. I feel like maybe I need to sit with this for a little while. Well, what I am certain of is that we just saw history. Something happened here. Something broke. Yeah, I don't believe that Joe Biden tweets. This is PR, people. But second of all, this doesn't really address the nature of the gaffe. I don't know. Social media is lauding Biden for the press conference. I don't think so. I don't think social media is. I'm not seeing a lot of like incredible reception of that press conference. And granted, maybe my Twitter is politically brain poisoned. Maybe normies are. But I'm still not voting for him. You know, you Australians not voting on in US elections, how could you? Honestly, bungling his we're going to normalize relations between Japan and South Korea bit into sounding like we're going to unify Japan and Korea just sunk him. I mean, like, on an international level, like, I would be incredibly worried about, like, the way he speaks. Listen to him is already trending. Yeah. Literally, the trending tab on Twitter is Vice President Trump. NATO, listen to him, like, Jover. It's not looking good. You know, we'll see what happens with the polling, but I don't think that this is going to be well received. Only person I've seen lauding Biden on Twitter is Wick, and he's been ramping into a Biden double down hard. Yeah. Also, I don't really trust Wick's political instincts. Who's Wick? A debate moderator with bad opinions who hangs out with Brianna Wu, who also has bad opinions. I think it was more, I agree that it was more coherent than the debate, but like less rhetorically effective, and it didn't have Donald Trump there to like make him seem better by comparison. So like I think optically and like PR wise, this is going to do more damage than the debate. Well, so the thing is, the other part of this, and maybe I haven't talked about this enough. The other part of this is, this was the press conference. This was the big unscripted event that all of establishment media, all of establishment figures in Washington, in the Democratic Party, this was the event all of them were watching. They were all watching to see how Biden would perform. They were all paying very close attention. And I think he bungled it. I do not think he was able to allay any of their fears. And I think, in fact, he intensified them. And I think that that is going to be reflective in the coverage of this over like the next week. You know, if he doesn't step down like tomorrow or Monday, like this is going to be the story. Already happening, a House member who, oh my God, House member who voiced support for him 3 days ago just rushed out a call to step down. A congressman from Connecticut, Jim Himes. Joe Biden's record of public service is unrivaled. This is at 7:29. This was like a couple minutes in. He probably saw the Kamala Harris flub and put this out. He must not risk that legacy, those accomplishments in American democracy, to soldier on in the face of the horrors promised by Donald Trump. Yep. Oh my God. That brings us to like 10 or 11 folks calling on him to step down in Congress. Clip from MSNBC.
Just saw for the last hour is definitely not someone who is considering leaving the race. He cited the polls showing that there's no data that he's seen that says that he can't win. He was very praiseworthy of Kamala Harris, of Vice President Harris, as he should be, and said some really warm and good things about her. But he also said, even though that he believes that she is clearly qualified to be president, and that's why he chose her, even if someone showed him data that showed that she did better than him, unless he sees data that he can't win, this doesn't sound like a man that's thinking about getting out. The guy that we just saw for the last hour.
I mean, I agree, but I think the public-facing signal versus what is actually believed and what is talked about behind closed doors, very different things. Hey, Vi Sophia. Yeah, Brutus Magnuson. I would suggest watching it. It's something. Well, yeah, exactly. It didn't fix anything, and I do think it did damage. I do think it did damage. I don't think he's coming back from this. Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, Selena Mary, that was rough. Okay, we're up to 15 representatives and 1 senator. How many people are required to invoke the 25th Amendment? His cabinet is in control of that, I believe. Has there ever... No, this is... We're in uncharted territory, Beck. We're in uncharted territory. To my knowledge, this has never happened before. Am I allowed to cry yet, or do I want to wait till it's closer to the election? I mean, I think it's okay to cry anytime. So, you know, cry now and closer to the election. Why not both? If you want to cry right now, that's catharsis right there, baby. Yeah, let it out. You'll feel better. Honest question, can we have a two-way conversation? Because that is needed for this job. Or can he have a two-way conversation? I mean, this press conference was supposed to show that he can do that. And he did. It just wasn't good. You know? It's your party and you can cry if you want to. 10 out of 10 comment. We are cooked, aren't we? Yeah, we're kind of cooked, tipster. We're kind of cooked. I'm not gonna say like there's not like a complete lack of hope, but like that was bad. And as we, you know, once we get past the DNC, because frankly, there's not a whole lot we can do about the DNC and the National Convention. There's not a whole lot we can do to influence that at this point. We're all just kind of locked into the roller coaster at this point and horrified. We can do more closer to the election, but right now our hands are kind of tied, and it's disturbing. I don't like it. I feel like a hostage in like one of Gotham City's Joker plans. I don't know. Like I feel like we're in like a weird supervillain thing where we got tied to a roller coaster or something. Like that's where we're at right now. Yeah, call your Congress people, I guess. Do a writing campaign. Talked to my normie parents today. They're mad that people are even suggesting he step out. Well, also, how old are your normie parents? You know, because I feel like there are a lot of normie parents who are like a little bit younger than Joe Biden who are really upset at the idea that basically they want to take Joe Biden's car keys. And Joe Biden's upset that they want to take his car keys. And we're all upset because we're not talking about car keys. We're talking about the entire fate of the planet. You know? I mean, but the issue is, Brutus Magnuson, we can't do that. Because the entire story and narrative right now that is believed by the Democratic Party establishment, believed by Joe Biden's own campaign, and frankly being pushed by Republicans, and will not stop being pushed by Republicans, is that he's a mentally incompetent, doddering old man who can't do the job. And none of these appearances are allaying that fear in the Democratic establishment and the people who work with him on a day-to-day basis. So, like, part of the issue is that this news story isn't going to go away. And his polling numbers are absolutely not doing great. am really, really curious to see what the reaction is tomorrow. Yeah. What is interesting though, this is from earlier today, and this gives me a little bit of hope. Okay? This gives me a little bit of hope. The embattled Biden campaign tests Kamala Harris' strength versus Trump. A head-to-head survey of voters between the vice president and Donald Trump in a sign of uncertainty even atop the Democratic Party. Like, this is within Biden's own campaign. They're already testing the water on this idea. You know? Commissioned by the Biden campaign's analytics team, it's the first time since the debate that Mr. Biden's aides have sought to measure up how the vice president would fare at the top of the ticket. Described by 3 people who are informed about it and insisted on anonymity because of the sensitive nature of the information. They did not specify why the survey was being conducted or what the campaign planned to do with the results. It could be read as the team gathering information to present a case to the president that his path forward is slim, or to argue that Mr. Biden is still the strongest standard bearer for his party. The effort comes as some longtime aides and advisors to Mr. Biden are said to have become increasingly convinced that he will have to step aside from the campaign, and in recent days have been trying to come up with ways to persuade him that he should, the New York Times reported on Thursday. A growing number of prominent lawmakers have called on Mr. Biden to drop out or suggest he should reconsider his plans to run. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're leaking that they're testing it. Exactly. Like, you have to understand that nothing in this business leaks accidentally. Like, it's leaked for a purpose. New York might be a swing state now. Yeah, the polling in New York is kind of grim. God. That was a really, really, really fucking scary press conference. I am so much more nervous after that. It's ridiculous. But folks, if you have been enjoying the content, please consider hitting the follow button on Twitch, hitting the subscribe button on YouTube, the like button on YouTube. And also consider dropping those sweet, sweet subs and donos, memberships, etc., because those would allow me to continue making this content and analysis for you guys. I'm not going to bed yet. It's the top of the hour plug. We've been going for 5.5 hours. This is actually crazier than him dropping out. No, it is. We're in like completely cuckoo bananas land. You know, like at this point, I'm kind of like, sure. They go to the convention and somehow Bernie emerges as president, as the presidential nominee. Sure, why not? Why the fuck not at this point? Why not? We're in crazy land.
Someone distract Biden with an ice cream cone.
Someone distract me with an ice cream cone. Thank you for the $5 dono, tipster. I appreciate you. Hope you're doing well tonight. Can I hit your button? Yes, please. Somehow Jeb Bush emerges from the Democratic convention. It was, yeah, no, it wasn't a debate. It was a press conference. Do I keep saying debate? It feels like a debate. It felt very confrontational. I know Bernie won't be the nominee.
Filling Jack's plug. Bibble.
Salmon Moose, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. I appreciate you. I still don't know what the deal is with Bibble. That's cute. I like it. But I got a dozen donuts? You lucky devil, you. It was a debate between Biden and Biden. Yeah. Let's just bring Biden to the vet already. Oh, God. I think people are just excited for debates. I'm excited for debates. I like them. That's how I say the word Bible in my head. It really wasn't that bad. No, it was bad. I think it was bad. Baked Beans, thank you for subscribing with Prime. Hell yeah. Like, could it have been worse? Sure. Did it do any of the things it needed to do? No. And did he worsen his overall position? And I would say yes. You know, he performed poorly. He didn't achieve any of the objectives for the campaign. And all he really accomplished was, you know, strengthening the impression of himself, I think. Yeah, he also pissed me off. That I'm not gonna lie, his answer about Gaza and then gun control really made me mad. Not because I oppose gun control, but mostly because it seems really weird to like gloss over a combat zone that you're sending 500-pound bombs to, where like 2/3 of the casualties are children. I don't know. And then you're talking about like bullets from assault rifles. My brother in Christ, you're sending the assault rifles to the mass shooters. Also, that was completely driven by the DNC. In what way? For some reason, it's not clicking in my brain. He definitely did the best he could, but that's kind of what's terrifying about it, right, Carly? That was his best foot forward. Yeah, right? Like, nothing to do now but aw shucks about it. Yeah, aw shucks. Call your congressman. Turn out and protest Biden if he's in your area. Like, that's what we got. That's all we got to do right now. Whispers intensify. God. Trump is staying quiet. Kind of. Also, Salmon Moose, I forgot to play your soundbite.
How can we all have died at the same time?
There we go. Ashley!
Jack, I first thought about drowning myself in ice cream. Then, after Biden finished, I want to drown myself in drugs instead.
I understand that impulse so much right now. Ashley, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I appreciate you. Thanks for helping to make this show possible. Appreciate you. Hell yeah. Why not both? True. I do wonder how Biden's cabinet can spin this one. I don't think it, you know, seeing his cabinet look at him during his gaffe, I don't think his cabinet is particularly interested in spinning for him. Oh yeah, Paladin, 100%. The issue is I don't think Biden is capable of bringing this media cycle to an end. I don't think he can do it. That's part of the problem, you know? Like, he needed a State of the Union moment, and he hasn't had that. And I feel like the media is absolutely going to continue to give the GOP a free pass until Biden steps down. Like, I don't see any other way that this goes.